Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. I enjoy how easy the meals are to make and the variety to choose from, and of course, how amazing the meals taste. For less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, like meatball pizza with fresh mozzarella cheese and charmed tomatoes, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you're never going to get bored. Customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs, and there's no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in about 40 minutes or less. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook.
Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user Bobby said he doesn't know how it works, but it gets the job done. That's good enough for me, Bobby. Pick up some new Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant for yourself at your local retailer.
Here we are. Good morning. We're back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Glad you've chosen to start this Monday with us, and what a weekend it was. All the football, of course, is on the docket today, plus the Windians continue to live up to their name, and Rafa racks up another Grand Slam in grand style. We've got it all ready to go. But first, Mike, to all in the path of Hurricane Irma, we're certainly thinking of you this morning. Watching the coverage all over the place this weekend is just incredible to see, and it is not over by any means as that storm continues to move up the west coast of the state of Florida.
It has been to watch that and know, and so, you know, what do you have, 6 million evacuations in Florida, that thank God that people got out of there, and for those that are there and got hit by it, boy, I tell you, our thoughts and prayers are with you. I'm seeing just this morning in Daytona Beach, it's down to a Category 1, and how vicious that looks, let alone when it was sitting at a 4 and coming up to Florida, you know, and the Key West and the islands off Florida it was hitting. It's just unreal to watch at how big that was, and thinking, oh my God, anybody in that path, you just really just pray for and hope that they're going to be all right, and continue to try and do whatever you can to be out of the path or be safe if you're in it.
I've spoken to a couple of our favorite Floridians. I spoke to Le Batard this weekend. I spoke to Stu Gatz this weekend. Le Batard and his family evacuated.
Yes, they did.
Stu Gatz is riding it out, I guess, is the term that they use. He stayed home with his family. Fortunate for him, of course, the path of the worst of it moved west.
Yeah, it moved a little west, going toward Tampa than Miami. But yeah,
Booger also got his family out. His family is out of there. Just accounting for some of the ESPN people that you may be thinking about. Obviously, it goes well beyond that.
Well, it is. I mean, we're how many thousands of miles away watching this thing. Imagine if you're in it, you're just waiting to hear you see that the models of where the path is going to go, and then you get a shift at the end, and all of a sudden, you know, there's a whole new group of people that are like, oh my God, now it's heading toward us. I mean, just a horrible, horrible situation.
Well, if you did get out, and hopefully most of you were able to, maybe there's no better way to spend this morning than talking about sports and getting your mind off what's going on. So let's do that for you. Let's start
off the top
by just going through quickly the other headlines of the day. This is an off the NFL, off the top.
Right.
And then we'll get you directly to the football. Congratulations to Rafa Nadal, won the U.S. Open for his 16th Grand Slam title this year. And, Mike, this year, the 4 Grand Slams in tennis, 2 of them were won by Federer, and 2 of them were won by Nadal.
Yeah, the second that he defeated Kevin Anderson in straight sets. So he joins Rod Laver in 1969, and then, as Greeny mentioned, another guy this year, Roger Federer, this year as the only man in the Open era with multiple majors in a year at age 30 or older. So, again, Rod Laver in 1969 and the other 2 this year. An incredible year with Federer. We were all hoping for the Federer-Nadal matchup in the semis. We did not get that. So second time in history that 2 men of any age won multiple majors in a year. The other was in 1967 with Newcomb and Roy Emerson. They did that. So really, really impressive for him. It's a fourth time Nadal in his career has won multiple majors in a year. He did it in 08, 2010, 2013, and this year along with Federer. So a great year for him, certainly a great year for Federer. So it'll be interesting going forward with the thing that Federer has done with the rest. If you start to see that more and more, well, Nadal's had some injuries that have kept him out of action. But knowing if you're healthy, if you start resting a little more to see where these guys can go, what are they? So he's 3 away. Nadal is 3 away from Federer.
Right.
Federer leads away with 19 majors, and Nadal now with his 16th. So.
So long as Nadal plays the French 3 more times, he's
exactly
assured of getting to 19.
He's going to get to 19. It's just a matter where Federer is at that point.
And going back to Saturday, Sloane Stephens,
yeah.
What an incredible – that's one of the more improbable stories. If you follow her career at all, you know where she was a year ago.
Right.
Even like 3-4 months ago, where she was to where she was standing on Saturday evening in that long embrace with Madison Keys. It was a great U.S. Open.
It was. I remember we had Chris Evert on, and she had said of the three, of Van de Wey, of Madison Keys, and Sloane Stephens, she said it was Madison Keys she thought would be that woman to take the next step. But listen, they both can. Sloane's 24, Madison's 22, so you look for more years of that.
Meanwhile,
off the top,
the Windians
make
it 18 straight and counting.
Oh, by the way, the Astros had an 11.5 game advantage over the Indians for the AL's best record on August 1st. If the playoffs started today, Indians' best record in the American League. An incredible run. They're 30-9 since that day, since August 1st. So, as I said, they would be the team right now. It's the first time the Astros didn't hold at least a share of the top spot in the American League since the morning of May 10th. It's now the 6th best winning streak going on in baseball right now. The top, the 1916 Giants at 26-35 Cubs. And then, Billy Beane and the A's had that 20-game winning streak in 2002. So the Indians now have a 3-game set with Detroit, which stinks right now. So you never know where this thing can go.
Off the top.
And finally, the Rockies sweep the Dodgers. So you talk about the Astros stumbling a little. Remember when it was a conversation about the Dodgers was whether or not they would have the best record in the history of the sport? All of a sudden, the Dodgers have lost 10 straight games.
Yeah, the Dodgers were 91-36 before losing 15 of their last 16. It's the worst record over a 16-game stretch for any team in baseball history that began from a place of more than 90 wins. And by the way, for you Dodger fans that are saying the way we were playing, it's World Series or bust. Well, look at the bust. No World Series winner has ever had a 10-game losing streak that season, and no World Series winner had ever lost 15 games in a 16-game span that season.
And so that is Off the Top, brought to you by Zyppah. Go to Zyppah.com. That's ZYPPAH.com. Get a Zyppah so you can stop snoring and enjoy what remains of the summer. Meanwhile, the NFL field, as soon as Golick has one more thought.
Did I get the Billy Beane? Was that the year? That was
say it again.
The Billy Beane, the money ball, the A's and the 20 wins. I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure. I think I did.
Which year were you getting?
Well, it was 2002. I'd said
right.
The A's, yeah.
That would be Billy Beane and the money ball. Absolutely.
Right. I thought so. I just wanted to make sure, So I looked over at Hembo for confirmation.
So we got all of that behind us. I didn't want to
start off 7 minutes in making a big mistake like that. So I wanted to make sure I was right, and if I was wrong, blame somebody else before we moved on to football.
Listen, by our standards, 7 minutes would be pretty good. Anyway, week 1 of the NFL is almost behind us. Of course, the doubleheader tonight on Monday night. You'll see both games on ESPN. But yesterday, a lot of fascinating action, and it culminated with the traditional opener between the Giants and the Cowboys. And basically, for most of the offseason, the question was, is Zeke Elliott going to be able to play? And then as it turned out, Elliott was able to play and Odell Beckham was not. And I think that there was an enormous factor there as the Cowboys get revenge after the Giants beat them both games last year, holding the Giants to just 3 points last night. A very discouraging start for the New York Football Giants.
Without a doubt. Listen, we had talked about this team that said we think they'll struggle with their offensive line. We think they're going to struggle running the ball. They did. 12 carries for 35 yards, 233 total yards on offense, and no Odell Beckham. I mean, so Vereen is your leading receiver, 9 catches for 51 yards, Shepard 7 for 44. I mean, you're missing. So I'm saying there's a lot of receptions, but not a lot of yards. You're missing your big play guy. Let's just be honest. The team's not going anywhere without Odell Beckham Jr. There's no doubt about that, and he's just not ready to go. And even if he was close, it was probably the smarter move to sit out in this one and get him fully healthy so he can be that big play guy. The defense is going to have to step up in the interim here, and you had Zeke Elliott rushing for over 100 yards. You had him rushing 31 times as a team for about 130 yards. So they were moving the ball on that Giant defense, but it's the offense. The defense is going to be fine. For the Giants is going to be fine. That offense is going to have to provide some help there, and it's not going to be any help until Odell Beckham Jr. can get out there.
Obviously, there are a couple of different storylines from a Giants standpoint, and the biggest of them is Odell because he is their most important player. But it is worth pointing out, and it was trending everywhere when it happened, that the Giants gave up a sack while their offensive line was being introduced last night. As they put up the graphic and each of the offensive linemen was introducing themselves, behind it, Eli Manning was getting, it was like a jailbreak, whatever. I mean, he got sacked by 4 different people on the same play as the Giants' offensive linemen's pictures were being flashed on the screen. And here's a terrible number, Mike, and you can explain just how damaging this will be for an offense. And again, it's week 1, and again, there's no Odell, so there will be greater concerns. Defenses will have to focus a little bit more on him and maybe a little less on other things. But this probably won't change. The Cowboys blitzed Eli Manning only 3 times on his 41 dropbacks last night. That's only 7% of the time that he went back that the Cowboys brought extra pressure. I guess they figured they didn't have to when they were right. They still sacked Manning 3 times and forced an interception while rushing just 4 guys. Bottom line, you don't have to be a coach, a former player, or a football expert to know if that's going to be your circumstance, you have very little chance to win.
I could let you break this one down. I mean, it's very simple. If 4 guys are rushing, that means you got 7 back. You don't have to bring any extra. You have them in the defensive backfield to make plays back there, and don't get hit with any big plays, a la if Odell Beckham is in there and can try and hit you with big plays. This offensive line, we said, I mean, if you can just have a 4-man rush on 5 guys and a couple of guys will have one-on-ones and win those battles and get pressure, that's what you'll do, and that's all you need to do. That's been the issue here. We saw that issue come up for Seattle when they played the Packers as well. We both like Seattle a lot, but talk about fingers crossed there for people on that offensive line. And they had their issues, as we'll get to as well. So in a time when we're talking about offensive line last year as the sexy play and who's got the good lines, we also have every old lineman rolling through here saying that position is coached and these guys are prepared. The worst of any of the players coming, saying for maybe the quarterback, coming from college, from the systems they come from. And when you can't get a few good ones together, it shows. And the shame of it is for the Giants, a couple of these guys were first rounders. And it just has not come to fruition for this line, and it's costing them.
And what does it come down to? I mean, the Giant defense hung in there most of the night, considering it felt like they were on the field the whole night.
Well, 10 minutes more.
When I saw it, I was surprised it was only that. Yeah. The Cowboys' advantage in time of possession was 34-14 to 25-46. Not even 9 full minutes. It felt like more. I know that's a lot in a football game, but it felt like worse. It felt like it was even worse than that. And the Giant defense hung in there, and they forced 4 field goals. They only gave up 1 touchdown in the game last night.
No, like I said, they're fine on defense. The offense got to come to play. The offense is going to have to help them out here, and you think offensive firepower with Eli and Odell, but it's just not going to happen without Odell.
So a huge divisional win for the Cowboys off the bat after, as I'm sure by now you know, on Friday, Zeke Elliott, as Will Cain told you was going to happen last week here on Mike and Mike, got his temporary restraining order. It is not a certainty that he will be able to play the entirety of the season, but it is the overwhelming likelihood that this stuff will now not get completed, adjudicated, whatever the word is, until after the season is over.
Yeah.
So I think we all believe he will eventually serve a 6-game suspension.
Just a matter of time.
It probably won't be this year.
Probably will not, yes, which goes well for the Cowboys.
So the Cowboys were at full strength, and Zeke Elliott was relieved to be back on the football field.
It just feels good to be out here with these boys. It's definitely been a tough last 14 months, and, at times it's gotten so hard, and, you start to lose faith. But, just being able to come in and be with these boys every day has kept me focused and, made me, not give up and keep going.
29 touches for him, 24 carries, 5 receptions, so right back into the fold there. In what he can do behind this really good, or to great, I should say, offensive line, and they just keep motoring on. Remember, this is a team they lost to twice last year in the regular season, the Giants. So they've gotten avenged one of those already in the start of a new season. Got this one at home.
As far as Zeke, the one quote I heard that he had last night that we didn't have for you right there was when he said, "I'm relieved that I'm finally going to get a fair trial." Well, on the stuff that really matters here, He isn't going to trial. It's worth pointing out.
Not a trial.
He will not face. He is not facing any criminal charges. And as far as getting a fair trial, as far as the court of the National Football League is concerned, the bad news for you, Zeke, unfortunately, is they don't care, and neither does your union. This has nothing whatsoever to do with what you did or didn't do involving this woman. This is exclusively, you are now, once again, as Tom Brady was, and so many others have been and probably will be in the future, you are exclusively a pawn in the middle of a power struggle over the powers of Article 46 granted to the commissioner of the NFL by the collective bargaining agreement. The NFL isn't fighting over what you did or didn't do. The union isn't fighting over what you did or didn't do. You're going to get to play, and that's fine. But as far as the quote-unquote fair trial part of it, let's not pretend that that's what anyone's concerns are here
anymore. This has nothing to do with what he was being suspended for. This is all the procedure. You're exactly right. And we both expect him to still, and oh, by the way, this is it goes to a certain distance here. The players usually lose this one as far as serving suspension. Will he have to serve all 6? We'll wait and see. I do believe he's going to have to serve some suspension at some point.
I actually think he will wind up serving all 6 because wherever it is this thing goes, they will not determine, well, the punishment was unfair. They're determining whether the process was fair
I agree.
or not
You just wonder if there's any kind of bargaining along the way. Hey, take some less games and let's make this all go away. You could do that. Either way.
I feel like if they were going to do that, they would have done it already.
My point is he is going to serve some time at some point. Yes.
Probably next season.
Suspension time. When I say serve time,
right?
Not, yeah.
No, we have to watch those words carefully here because there is the obvious difference. As far as the other side of it is concerned, again, no Odell Beckham yesterday after a hit in a preseason game that has cost him all of this time. And listen, if there was any chance that he was going to further aggravate this thing, then they made 100% the right decision. I know the Cowboy game is important, but they have 15 games remaining on the back end.
Listen, I agree. High ankle, and he's in the 3rd week of that, finishing, or 3rd to 4th week of that. So let's see where it goes. That is something that can be nagging. That's what Myles Garrett has for the Cleveland Browns, the #1 pick overall, a high ankle sprain. That's just, believe me, a lot worse than just rolling your ankle that we've all done time and time again. This one takes a little while.
Well, and in a weekend where we saw Aaron Donald come in and report and take his physical, and he will play at some point for the Rams, he's in the same situation contractually that Odell Beckham is in. And Louis Riddick was watching the game last night, always with the front office perspective, and he was saying last night was a very good night for the leverage of Odell Beckham.
Without Odell Beckham Jr., look, if he wanted leverage in any way, shape, or form, look, you never want to wish for anybody to get hurt, but this injury for him to sit out right now absolutely is shining a big, bright light on the fact that, look, Brandon Marshall's a fine player, but he's not the kind of guy who can really be a #1 receiver and carry a team right now. And Odell Beckham, without a doubt, now has all kinds of, I just want to say, negotiating points to take to the table.
You know, I think, and I get what Lewis is saying, thinking like a front office guy. I get it. Odell Beckham is going to be the highest paid receiver in the league, whether he played last night and never got hurt or got hurt. And Aaron Donald is most likely going to be the highest paid defensive player. If not, he's going to be right there at the top. It's just the timing for both of them is going to hit right until somebody else takes that mantle from them. But they're both going to be at the top of their position.
Yeah, with one exception, and that is if either or both of them suffer serious injuries this season that wind up derailing, a really bad injury. That's the reason that Donald was hesitant to go back in there. I get it. And Beckham is playing, and he'll play, and he'll just hope he doesn't get seriously hurt, and then after the year, he'll get his money. Anyway, that's the last game of the day yesterday. There certainly were plenty more. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot, even if you have insurance with another company. See how much you can save before you switch.
I think overall, you look at it, a lot of people talk about preseason and preparing for the season, and the starters don't play a lot. And what do we always talk about at the beginning of a season? Who's ahead of who? The defense is usually ahead of the offense because the defense, as I heard my son Mike put it this morning on First and Last, that he didn't mean it as a shot, but in defense it is more see ball, hit ball. Where on offense, there's certainly just hear a play call on offense as opposed to defense and all the different parts and what they have to do. Defenses are usually ahead of the offenses early in the season. So yesterday's game, there were 6 teams held below 10 points. 4 teams, 4 didn't score a touchdown. Not one touchdown. The Giants didn't score a touchdown. San Francisco didn't score a touchdown, losing 23-3 to Carolina. The Cincinnati Bengals, holy smokes, looked horrific. Baltimore shut them out 20-0, and Green Bay beat Seattle 17-9. It was 3 field goals. So 4 teams without a touchdown. The other 2 under 10 points. The Colts lost to the Rams 46-9. And
it wasn't that close.
No, it was not.
If a football game could ever be less close than 46-9, it was that.
A lot of good stuff to talk about. And what Jacksonville did to Houston, beat them 29-7. So that's the other team under 10 points in this one. So it was some bad. Your Jets could be rivaled as the worst team in the.
They weren't anywhere near the worst team in the league.
Anywhere near the worst. They're in the top 5 of the worst, but they're not getting the number 1 pick right now.
They may have gotten the single most stunningly bad coaching decision of the day yesterday, but they're not the worst team. Here was the observation I was going to make. There are some unimaginably horrible teams in the NFL, right? The Colts are a high school team. I mean, without Andrew Luck, the Colts are their roster is as bad as any roster in the NFL.
I think I can go. I mean, it certainly isn't a reach to say they're the worst team in the NFL. I mean, people may look at
Scott Tolzien is their quarterback. They are.
People may, and he turned out not to be. Jacoby Brissett ended up coming in this game. We had quarterbacks being pulled yesterday. I honestly think they're the worst team, and I think San Fran might be following them up before your Jets.
I was going to say there were some terrible teams in the NFL: the Colts, the Niners, the Jets. Now, the Browns, I think, actually showed you a little something yesterday. They looked a little better.
Yeah,
but that's why. But we knew those were bad teams.
Yes.
This is why the two were, well, let me hold it on that thought, actually, then, because we're going to run out of time here, and let me give you a full thought. There are two teams who I thought had disastrously bad days yesterday. I'm not including the Colts. I'm not including the Niners. I'm not including the Jets, because at the end of the season, you could add up all 3 of those teams, and they're not going to have won 8 games. So that's almost secondarily significant. There are 2 teams that had truly terrible days yesterday. We'll tell you what they were, plus a brutal opening weekend for injuries. We will run down the results of those as well coming up next, because among other things, a lot of fantasy teams could be significantly impacted.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Twitter reaction all morning long through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Jonathan tweets, I'm a Dallas fan, and OBJ being out is a perfect reason to pay him what he wants. The Giants' offense looked hideous without him.
Oh, they will pay him, but, I mean, that wasn't the situation now. He's out because of injury. He's not holding out. He'll get paid. He's going to be the highest paid receiver in the game. So they worry more now about, as I said, players worry about the season, the next game, and players would love to have Odell on the field. That's what they know he's going to get his money. That's not a concern. That's not anybody else's concern when you're dealing with somebody else's business and their money. They want him out on the field, and he needs to get that thing healed up.
Zach Shepard tweets, why did the Giants get Brandon Marshall? He was hardly recognizable throughout the entire game. Worth pointing out, he was hurt during the preseason.
Yes, he was.
Also, and he is, I think, a very good complement to Odell. When all of the attention is being focused on Odell, then Marshall, with his size, I think becomes a very nice number 2 receiver on that team, or even number 3 with Shepard, and he's a very good red zone target.
Yep, exactly.
No Odell last night, I think, sort of also shifted the balance there.
Yeah, 1 catch for 10 yards. It is a different offense than what he was used to as well. The system, I know there was talk in the preseason of getting acclimated to that, and as Greedy mentioned, he was nicked up as well.
Now, let me ask you, I can't really respond to this one. Zolma tweets, Giants had awful play calling. Ben McAdoo still hasn't figured out how to protect Eli. Hashtag get it together. How much of what you were, as best as you can tell, when you watch the Giant offensive line struggle to protect Eli, is that mostly them just not being good players?
There's a couple of ways you can go through this. I mean, you can have him get rid of the ball quickly because your offensive line can't protect that long, but the defense isn't a bunch of dummies. I mean, Dallas only had to rush 4. So they're basically saying, listen, we're ready for you to throw the ball. And, oh, by the way, if our guys with 4 can get pressure, why would we play off? So even if you want to throw quickly, we can still cover. You don't have your best receiver on the field, so we could play up a little more on some of these guys because we know you're going to have to throw the ball a little quicker. I mean, the defense adjusts. That's what they do. So, no, I'm not putting it on the play call. You can try and do it all you want, but a defense is going to play up, and now where are you throwing the ball?
That's the part of this that sort of always confuses me, though, with the Giants is that it's one thing to schematically not do a good job protecting your quarterback. It's another thing if your guys are just getting beat. They've got names up there.
They got 2 as I said, Pugh and Flowers are 2 first-rounders. And
so why are they this bad?
They're just, it goes into – listen, I'm going to go back when they took both those guys, and I didn't like either pick.
Right.
I said it on tape or video, so it's there. It's not like I'm saying it right now. I didn't think those were prudent picks at the time. So is it how they're scouting, how they're picking the guys, how they're coaching the guys? You want to throw scheme in there as well. It could be a lot of things, but the bottom line is I don't care who you are or who you draft. If 5 guys are up on that line, some of you are going to have to block one-on-one. That's what you're getting paid to do, and you have to do it, and they don't do it very well. So you either have to find a way, have them get better at doing it. You can't hide them. You can't leave 2 tight ends in all the time and a back in all the time, and send three people out for a pass. You got to rely on those guys. You can certainly give them some help. But at the end of the day, you got 5 of them. You need them to perform at a better rate than they're performing right now, or you're going to have to reshuffle the deck. And I don't mean right now during the season. Season has started. You have who you have right now. It's not like you got an all-pro, on the street there that you could pull in at some point. So this is who you decided to go with. They have to play better. If they can't, you have to live with the consequences of that.
One more I want to read you from When Purdue tweets, I'm in Orlando and so happy to have a diversion. You guys are the best. Again, we opened by saying for all of you in harm's way there as Hurricane Irma works its way up through Florida and beyond, we wish you the best. And obviously we're thinking of you. And if we can create that diversion for you for a couple hours this morning here talking sports, we're glad to do it. Which brings me back to the point I was making right before we went to break. There are some terrible teams in the National Football League. The Jets are a terrible football team. The 49ers are a terrible football team. The Colts may be the worst of them all. But we knew that.
We did.
Nothing is expected of any of them. Those are all teams. I mean, the Colts won't be looking for a quarterback in the draft, so maybe they'll be in the best shape of anybody because they'll have a quarterback and they'll have a high pick.
They can hold for a king's ransom, yeah.
The Jets are going to need a quarterback. The Niners, we'll see if they go after Cousins, whatever. The point is, we knew those teams were going to be awful. So it's kind of hard to say they had a terrible day yesterday.
Can I guess your 2 teams?
Go ahead.
Houston and Cincinnati.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For the Bengals and the Texans to get drubbed at home in divisional games yesterday the way they did is as bad a start as you can possibly have. Now, I don't know. The Texans have had a really unusual several weeks here, clearly, and it's hard to know how to factor that into the equation with all that's happened with Harvey and J.J. Watt has been raising millions of dollars, and all that is obviously much more important than a football game. But all we talked about was how great it was going to be for the community to have them come and play a game there on this day, and they just got destroyed.
They did.
And I mean, they benched the quarterback at halftime, and they go to Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, threw an interception on his very first possession. It got called back on a very questionable penalty.
Yeah, it did.
And so he winds up throwing a touchdown on his first possession, but that was all they did offensively. Those 2 teams, and the Bengals get shut out at home. So just terrible, terrible starts for 2 teams that have hopeful expectations in Houston and Cincinnati.
Without a doubt. I mean, Dalton, 16 to 31, 4 interceptions. In this one.
He was terrible.
Oh, and he was sacked 5 times in this game as well. The Baltimore defense, well, we know they have a good defense. You'll wonder about the Baltimore offense out there. Now, they weren't a juggernaut. They had 268 yards of total offense. Now, they ran the ball 42 times. They controlled the ball for 8 minutes more than Cincinnati did. So they did all they needed to do to win this game. They sacked Dalton a lot. They put a lot of pressure on him. They didn't let Cincinnati run the ball. So this Baltimore defense is certainly a for real defense, and see what the offense can add to them. Again, this isn't going to be a juggernaut offense, but it needs to be a good enough offense to complement this defense. As far as Cincinnati, I mean, wow. I was stunned at that because you see some of the weapons that they have, and you wonder, can they ever take that next step? We've seen them do things in the regular season, but they can't do anything in the postseason. But then to come out of the gate this bad, I mean, there's going to be a whole lot of negativity going on in that city right now.
Yeah, well, Houston and Cincinnati actually play this week on Thursday. That's the Thursday night game in Cincinnati this week, so we'll see where that goes. The Jaguars, meanwhile, listen to what the Jacksonville defense did yesterday in Houston. They had 10 sacks and a defensive touchdown in that game. They're the second team in history with at least 10 sacks and a defensive touchdown in a season-opening game. Houston benches the quarterback at halftime, so let me ask you. I guess it's worth asking the question right now. Tom Savage, it's not like he's a big money guy. It's not like he's a big expectation guy. Hembo just sent me a stat. He actually has more career sacks than he has 20-yard completions. And they went to the bullpen halfway through the first game. Is Deshaun Watson your quarterback now?
You put Savage in again. It's just a matter of, okay, you put him in when you pull on him again. Because you know it's going to happen. So you either go in with the attitude of saying, Savage starts, we see how he does, and we go to the bullpen if we need to, or we just make the switch right now and put Deshaun Watson in there, give him all the reps at one in the practice, get him behind that line all the time, get him the majority of the reps, because that's how it works at these practices, and kind of let him go. And I don't mean, that doesn't mean you're throwing the season in, because, Tom Savage didn't give you a reason to hang your hat to say, okay, we're fine at the quarterback position with our supposed great defense out there where we can do something. So you start Savage in this game, it's just, everybody is just waiting, right? You're just waiting to when and you know who else is? Him. So every bad pass, every bad play, you look over your shoulder, you wonder when you run to the sideline, are you going back into the next series? So I would think you would just make that switch right now and let Deshaun Watson get the reps, because they have some firepower on offense. That defense was a big letdown, quite honestly. I mean, that is great. And however you want to go about this, listen, just horrific things went on with the floods in Houston. The players, we saw they canceled the last preseason game so they could be there and help with the community. They've all done so much. You wonder if there's any hangover from that. You don't know. You want to be sensitive to what they've done there, but you don't want to take a lot away from Jacksonville either. Now, a lot of people, including you, picked Jacksonville last year, and they didn't perform, and you thought maybe they'd be a year away. Everybody kind of shied away from them, though, this year, saying, maybe we'll give them another year. They came out of the gate strong, as you mentioned. They paid a lot of money for free agents on defense. They have some high draft picks on defense that are coming to fruition, so it's coming together for them. We'll see. That was one game. But for Houston, that defense did nothing. That defense needs to be better. I would just make the switch right now, because if you don't, you're just waiting for the next switch in the next game. Everybody's waiting for it, including Tom Savage, and that can't be a good thing.
Listen, if you're Cincinnati and Houston yesterday, you got blown out. And here's what the quarterbacks against you did, okay? Cincinnati lost 20-0. The opposing quarterback, Joe Flacco, had 9 completions for 121 yards. Houston lost 29-7 at home to Jacksonville. Blake Bortles had 11 completions for 125 yards. They got obliterated yesterday at home by division teams in games in which the quarterbacks did nothing against them. Nothing. Right. So that's as bad a start as you can possibly have. And again, those teams will meet up this Thursday in, I guess, what shapes up to be a pretty big game.
Dad, we talk a lot about sports.
Yes, we do.
Food.
Yep.
And sometimes even health.
That is true.
In a recent survey, the Cleveland Clinic found that today's fathers and sons are talking more about their health than previous generations, but there's still a conversation gap around below-the-belt issues.
Cleveland Clinic wants to remind all men to mention it to their doctor.
Doctors have heard it all before, especially Cleveland Clinic. They're ranked #1 in urology in the nation.
And they've got answers to 10 questions most men are afraid to ask at clevelandclinic.org/mention it.
By the way, one other note just on that Colts-Rams game, which was totally dominant, and I don't even know how to read into how good Goff looked and everything else, because the Colts are just so bad. But I assume you saw at least part of that game. Did you see how many seats there were available in Los Angeles? My goodness. That looked like the second half of the 4th preseason game as far as the crowd was concerned.
What was worse, that or San Francisco, which was ugly as well?
Yeah, but that was bad. But Yeah, that was bad too.
It was.
It wasn't as noticeable to me. Maybe I just didn't notice it. It wasn't as noticeable to me just how empty the place looked as it was in Los Angeles. But the good news for everyone who didn't go to the game in Los Angeles yesterday is that now you have two teams whose games not to bother going to, because you have the Chargers coming to town as well.
I want to sit here now. We're right at the start of this, but I had said I didn't think a team was going to work in L.A., let alone two teams. But that's what we have, and we'll see. Obviously, winning takes care of a lot of things. If all of a sudden you start to have the Chargers or the Rams are a winning team, then that can absolutely change things. But there have been teams in L.A. before, and that hasn't worked. I don't know what the thought process. I know what the thought process is. Second biggest TV market. They're going to make an incredible stadium for so many things and complex out there. So we'll see where it goes. But to your point, I mean, first week of football, everybody's starving for football. Everybody can't wait for football yet. Good seats available.
Listen, whatever it is they build there, these beautiful stadiums, hopefully they'll put something in them that people want to come see.
Yeah.
Concerts or something like that. Obviously, it isn't football. Anyway, quickly on the Andy Dalton performance. Of all the quarterbacks in the league yesterday, he had by far the worst.
Yes, he did.
I'm not including Scott Tolzien because he just doesn't belong in the conversation. No disrespect to him personally, but he's not Andy Dalton, who is supposed to be a franchise quarterback. Andy Dalton yesterday posted a total QBR of 0.6. Not 6. But 0.6, which is the lowest of any quarterback who had at least 30 plays in any game since our stats department started first keeping track of this in 2006. He had the worst game of any quarterback in 12 years.
Yeah, it was ugly. And he had been a guy we had talked about that had good regular seasons but couldn't win in the playoffs. And, so much talk about his backup, A.J. McCarron. Man, they should trade him. They can get something for A.J. and let A.J. go play somewhere else. Well, I have a feeling you may start hearing other kinds of comments by Bengal fans. Now this is, again, week one, but this is what you do. Everybody reacts and or then overreacts to what they see. And you mentioned the two teams, and hopes were high in Cincinnati. Pittsburgh, everybody picked to win that division, but there were more than a few that are like, hey, you know what? Cincinnati, think they can come along and maybe challenge Pittsburgh or get that wild card spot, and you couldn't start any worse. Any worse for a team, again, that was thought to be able to do something this year. I'm not talking about the teams that we knew were going to be bad. This for Marvin Lewis and that team going into film today and watching, there's going to be a lot of head scratching and soul searching in week one to look that bad right out of the gate.
They host Houston on Thursday night. Speaking of Houston, by QBR, Tom Savage was 12 times better than Andy Dalton was yesterday, and he got benched at halftime. So that's the day they had. Philadelphia, Washington, as we work our way around some of the really big games and what we expect to be a very competitive, jam-packed NFC East, and I thought a really solid win for the Eagles, whose defense harassed Kirk Cousins all day long. And I tell you what, Cousins is going to get paid a lot of money, and he deserves it because he's an above-average NFL quarterback, and those are in short supply. Right. And he's going to be a free agent. But there are some days where he looks incredibly average, and yesterday was one of those days. In his defense, they got rid of all of his weapons. I mean, besides Jordan Reed there's not anyone left for him to throw the ball to that you recognize anymore.
Well, Terrell Pryor's the number one receiver and came over from Cleveland in the offseason. He is the go-to guy, and he led the way with 6 catches for 66 yards. They have Jordan Reed, the tight end, who hasn't been what Jordan Reed has been.
Yes, take it from me as one who had paid a lot of money for him on DraftKings yesterday. He didn't have a big day.
He did not. Still dealing with injuries. Cousins got sacked 4 times. Again, when you get sacked 4 times, that's not the only time you get hit. You usually get hit way more than the times you got sacked. So he was under pressure. So credit that defensive line for Philadelphia. And that, I thought, was one of the questions coming in, was how much could that, if you were ready for the offense to take the next step with Carson Wentz, who threw for over 300 yards, could that defense play well enough so you're not in a shootout all the time with a second-year quarterback? And, boy, at least, again, in week one, and that's all we have to go on, that question was answered, at least for this week, with how well that defense played.
And yet, let me tell you, the defense was really good, but I thought, to me, the story of that game is Wentz. Wentz was terrific, and we're looking to see if he can take that next step forward. And Washington has a decent defense, and they were all over him yesterday. He got a lot of pressure, and he was moving around, and he was buying time. He threw one very bad interception.
Yeah, he did.
But by and large, he was buying time and finding guys downfield. They got him more weapons. I thought Wentz had a very solid start yesterday, and that's a big road win in the division for the Eagles.
Yeah, I do, and I agree with you about the weapons, but I think it's going to be Zach Ertz who's going to be that kind of security blanket, and Ertz can be a good play guy, big play guy as well. He led the way yesterday. I still think he's going to be that guy for him.
All right, we're going through all the big games of the day yesterday, and we'll tell you how a quarterback can throw 2 game-winning touchdowns and still lose. Stay there, Mike and Mike.
First time skydiving? Sure is. Okay, you just open the door like this and you jump. Oh, wait. Should we be like in tandem? Tandem? That's a great idea. Are you a certified instructor? No, but I love parachutes and I love people. Here we go.
You wouldn't take chances with an uncertified skydiving instructor. Don't do it with your finances. Find a certified financial planner professional today at letsmakeaplan.org. CFP. Work with the highest standard.
Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. I enjoy how easy the meals are to make and the variety to choose from, and of course, how amazing the meals taste. For less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals. You can choose from a variety of new recipes each week, like meatball pizza with fresh mozzarella cheese and charmed tomatoes, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you're never going to get bored. Customize your recipes each week based on your preferences. Blue Apron has several delivery options, so you can choose what fits your needs, and there's no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Each meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe and pre-portioned ingredients and can be prepared in about 40 minutes or less. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. You're going to love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/Mike and Mike. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook.
Did you hear that 91% of guys that use Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant recommend it? Dove Men Plus Care user Daniel said that his armpits aren't the worst thing at the gym anymore. Make the locker room a better place and pick up some new Dove Men Plus Care for your gym bag at your local retailer.
Another hour back and better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now we'll get to some of the college games in this hour as well. Heavy football, as you would imagine. Booger in an hour. Jeff Saturday coming up. Lincoln Riley, coach of Oklahoma. What a win that was for the Sooners Saturday night, gaining revenge in Columbus. We'll get to that one coming up shortly. Your Twitter all morning long. Chris tweets, as a Steeler fan, Le'Veon Bell was a complete disaster. No one can ever tell me holding out doesn't matter for a professional. Well, bottom line of it is this. That's both sides, right? Both sides. They could have signed him to a deal that he wanted. He doesn't have to sign the franchise tag until he wants to. So long as he doesn't get hurt, everything will wind up fine.
Yeah. And listen, once July 15th hit, then it was all on Le'Veon Bell. Because there was nothing the team could do, and Le'Veon Bell wasn't going to get any more money. So at that point, he just decided, for whatever reason, whether this is me punishing Pittsburgh or me just not wanting to do training camp, I'm going to wait. And I agree with the tweeter on that one. There's no way you hold out that long and come in and you hit the ground running. You just don't. You're not in football shape. I don't care what training you do. I don't care what training you do. You don't have pads on and nobody's hitting you. So you're not like you're getting hit in a ton of training camp anyway, but you're getting hit some. You're getting in football shape, and he's not. He had 13 touches yesterday in a game that was a close game. Cleveland had a nice showing for week 1 and made it a 3-point game in here. So they made it a good game, and one you were wait for a guy like Le'Veon Bell to make his mark. Antonio Brown is Antonio Brown's ridiculous, 11 catches for 182 yards. But Bell, it's going to take him a bit to get in playing shape.
Flacco tweets at us, Houston benched the quarterback by halftime the first game last year as well. It's bad coaching in Houston, in my opinion. And the only thing I can think of, Mike, is if you're changing quarterbacks at halftime of your first game, it means that you weren't sold on your guy in the first place.
That's exactly right.
And so look, I get it. You drafted the guy because you wanted to become your quarterback eventually. I understand that. Houston is going to give the ball to Deshaun at some point soon. But if you were willing to bench, in my opinion, if you were willing to bench Savage at halftime the first week, you might as well have just started Deshaun.
He wasn't your quarterback then. I mean, you can say all the right things going into the season, that Savage has earned this, that he's the guy, that it's his job, and blah, 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 all that. But Greeny's right. You bench him at halftime, you're basically saying, well, there wasn't all the confidence in the world in many ways. We're willing to pull the trigger this quickly on putting another quarterback in there.
James Jones is 9 wins for the Jaguars too far this year. They get Indy twice, the Jets, the 49ers, and the Browns all coming up. Look, if their defense plays like that.
Their defense was, I think a lot of people, like yourself, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, got scared off a little bit last year. You guys picked them last year to get in the playoffs. They bombed. So it was like, you know what, maybe we'll wait another year. And not many people, I don't think many at all, put them in the playoffs this year. I know I didn't. I didn't last year, and I didn't this year. And again, it's 1 week, but they put a lot of money in free agents on that defense, a lot of high picks. Dante Fowler and Miles Jack, Miles Jack was fantastic yesterday, but that whole defense was. Calais Campbell, they paid a ton of money, had 4 sacks of the 10 yesterday. So basically, the defense won this one. The offense didn't do a whole lot. Now, Fournette had 100 yards, but Blake Bortles, you still have Blake Bortles as your quarterback, and so if you don't have to have him win you a lot of games, you might be in decent shape if the defense can play like that, but that's a tough bar for the defense to be at every week, that's for sure.
You can count on the fingers of one hand the number of games that'll be won this year by a team whose quarterback plays the way Blake Bortles played yesterday.
Yeah.
Blake Bortles had 11 completions yesterday for less than 120 yards.
But to your point, James' point, you do get Indy twice. You do get the Jets. You do get the 49ers and the Browns. We'll see. I thought the Browns looked pretty good yesterday, but certainly all winnable games. So 9 wins. I don't know if I'm going that far on this team. Probably not. But it's a team that's going in the right direction, at least from 1 week.
They're a team. I'll pick them to make the playoffs when they get their quarterback situation figured out. And then Rick tweets, did Stafford earn his paycheck yesterday? I mean, if you watched them play yesterday, then you know why anyone who's complaining about the money that Stafford got paid doesn't know what they're talking about. You have to be out of your mind. I mean, did you watch him yesterday in the second half? Every week they get behind. They start a little bit slow.
They're down again in the fourth quarter.
Their defense gave them the lead, though, at one point early in the game yesterday. How many interceptions do they have of Carson Palmer? Was it 2 or 3?
I believe
multiple turnovers early in that game yesterday. And then Stafford just gets it going, and he flings it around. And watch teams that are trailing in fourth quarters yesterday, all around the sport, flailing to try and figure out anything. I mean, they can't even put together a first down, and there is Stafford just flinging it to guys, Kenny Golladay, guys you never heard of in your entire life, throwing 2 touchdowns. Stafford is worth every penny that they are paying him without question.
I mean, that was a ridiculous conversation to think, what are you paying him that for? I mean, it's crazy. You're paying the dude brings you back in this is what they were. They're the new cardiac kids at last year, all the fourth quarter comebacks, and they did it again this year, down 17-15 going into the fourth.
They're the cardiac cats are the Detroit Lions, and they're 1-0. Mike and Mike, our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, including Jeff Saturday coming up here shortly. And again, Lincoln Riley, coach at Oklahoma. We are brought to you in part by Upside. You can now save big on travel. Get a big gift card with every trip you buy. You will love Upside.com. That's Upside.com. Danger Will Robinson. The Seattle offensive line is a bigger problem than I assessed it to be. I had a good feeling about Seattle. You heard me pick them to win the Super Bowl, and I'm certainly not backing off of that based upon one bad performance yesterday on the road against a really good team in Week 1. But they got a lot of work to do on that offensive line. My goodness. I mean, Russell Wilson. First of all, I don't think they had the ball in the first half yesterday. Did Seattle actually possess the ball in the first half at all yesterday in that game? It felt like Green Bay had the ball the entire time. They're moving up and down the field and managing not to score. Seattle winds up 3-0 at halftime, which was remarkable. It was a crazy game.
Yeah, it was.
The second half, Rodgers gets it going a little bit, and that Seattle offensive line is really a problem.
It's really bad. And I sit there and made my picks, and I did not have the Giants in based on their bad offensive line can't run the ball, and I have Seattle going to the Super Bowl. Bad offensive line, but great defense. But the Giants have a great defense as well, and that offensive line looked horrible. Absolutely looked horrible. But I should say for Seattle's defense, they did sack Aaron Rodgers 4 times. Russell Wilson got sacked 3 times. Both of them were running around an awful lot. In the second half, they quickened up the throws for Aaron Rodgers, so he wasn't under as much pressure. But you know what breaks that game open? The Aaron Rodgers move.
Yep.
The Aaron Rodgers, the quick play at the line of scrimmage, catch a defense, substituting. They caught him with 12 guys on the field, running one off, so he is the king of the free play. So he got a free play, 32-yard touchdown to Jordy Nelson in a low-scoring game when you're looking for a turning point. that was it for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I mean, that literally was it. Seattle didn't score a touchdown in the game, and so there's Green Bay with a huge opening win, and who knows if that will wind up being relevant when we get to playoff time.
I'm going to tell you, very impressed with the Green Bay defense. Very impressed. Now, the Seattle offense isn't going to remind you of a juggernaut offense, but we do like Russell Wilson and what he does. But I don't think they're going to be a great offense. They should be a good offense. That Green Bay defense played extremely well. For a defense that really didn't play well at the end of last year in the playoffs, they looked fantastic yesterday.
And here's Louis Riddick on the struggles of the Seattle offensive line.
Their offensive line is just not strong enough. They're not good enough in pass protection. They can't move anybody off the football. They don't have a running back right now that can set the tone for the offensive line, although it's rare that you can find running backs who can do that. But they've been searching for that guy since Marshawn Lynch left. And you saw today the offense reverted to what we saw last year so many times. Russell dropped back. Russell's eyes come down, look at the rush. Russell try and make something happen and throw the ball down the field. If everything gets off timing there, they're in big trouble. And right now they're in big trouble.
Russell Wilson was your leading rusher. You know which quarterback being your leading rusher?
Bad.
Yeah.
And they've got a bunch of running backs that you'd think that they should be distributing the ball to, and part of it is that they actually do give the ball to a bunch of different people. But it's not a good start for Seattle yesterday. Their defense looked fine, and they're going to be really good. That's maybe the best quarterback in the sport that they're playing against yesterday on the road in an opener. So I'm not overly worried about Seattle, but they've got work to do. Remember that for those of you who are concerned about some things that you saw yesterday, you can take solace in the fact that now more than ever before, these first couple of games are just an extension of preseason. They're all kind of figuring things out. So I do believe Seattle will get much, much better. Wilson's a great player. They have weapons on that offense. I believe their offense will get to a place that it'll be good enough to complement that defense well enough.
I would agree.
That they'll win a bad division. I'm not going crazy on what the Rams did yesterday. Yes, their defense is good. Yes, Goff looks much, much better.
Right.
But that might be the worst team in the league they played yesterday. Without Andrew Luck, I think the Colts are the worst team in the league.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So I wouldn't get totally crazy on that yet. Seattle will be just fine. A couple other NFL games I want to touch on here. I said, how can a quarterback throw 2 game-winning touchdowns and still lose? Mike Glennon didn't set the world on fire yesterday at home against Atlanta. He was okay much of the day. But that last drive, the Bears lose to Atlanta yesterday, what would have been an enormous win at home against the defending NFC champs. Think about the enthusiasm you would have in Chicago this morning if they win that game. They lose it basically on 3 plays. The touchdown, and Mike showed it to you on ESPN2 a little while ago here on TV, the touchdown that Ryan throws where he is dead to rights deep in his own territory on a 3rd down play and throws what turns into a 90-yard touchdown to Hooper, who's just basically could fair catch it, then stiff arm one guy and run into the end zone. I don't want to call it a fluky play, but it's kind of a crazy play, a busted coverage the Bears have. And then in that last drive, Glennon moves them right down the field. I thought Glennon was terrific on that drive, and he had 2 blatant drops on the first and second downs of that series. They wind up going 4 plays. They don't get into the end zone. Atlanta holds on for the win.
Yeah, the first one to Josh Bellamy. Bellamy turns a little late.
Could have been holding.
Could have been
defensive holding.
I had a lot of people tweet that. I said, that's fine, but you know what? In the moment, you got 3 more plays.
And he still should have caught the ball. And the ball still hits him in the hand.
He got his head around a little late on that. Didn't get them both up for it. The second one was the worst one, was Jordan Howard. Now, he probably wouldn't have got in, but he would have got knocked out of bounds. Even if he didn't, there was time to still kill it or run a fade or do something and run another play. You could see Jordan Howard catching the ball on the one. You saw him turn his head before the ball even got to his hands. So that was a blatant drop. Then it's a pass to Miller, Zach Miller, the tight end that really didn't have a chance on 3rd down, and they don't get it on 4th down. He gets sacked, and that's the ball game. But they were right there. They were a chance with 4 cracks at it from the 5-yard line right there. I thought for sure they were going to pull that one off.
So a huge win for Atlanta, of course, to hold on and get a game in the conference on the road. Good win. And the Bears fought yesterday. I mean, Atlanta is not the same team on the road as they are at home, and defenses are ahead of offenses. So let's see what the Falcons' offense is going to wind up being. But all things considered, a relatively encouraging game for the Bears yesterday.
Yeah, I agree.
And they just weren't able to get it done. One more I want to get your take on, and that's Oakland, Tennessee. And what could be a huge win for the Raiders on the road in the conference. The Raiders have now won 7 straight 1 o'clock Eastern time games. That's incredible. And what's the last West Coast team to do that? I know they had been tied with the 49ers, right? Wasn't it tied? So now where does that streak go to 7 straight? We'll see. So it's a huge win for them. Amari Cooper had a couple of drops yesterday, but Crabtree and Cooper are really good. They ran it with Marshawn Lynch a little bit yesterday. They played solid defense with Derek Carr in the lineup, and I know he's your MVP pick.
Yeah.
The Raiders, I mean, boy, the battle between them and the Chiefs in that AFC West is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it really is. And how about the kicker Tavecchio? Is that? I mean, so Sebastian Janikowski, they had the whole contract issue. They work it out, but then he goes on IR. He's been injured, so he goes on IR. So this Tavecchio kid, who had been in I think with them the last few preseasons kicking, but never in a game. Now all of a sudden he's the kicker. Now he just finds out he's kicking live. He has 4 field goals, 2 of them 52-yarders. I mean, so he had a monster day for them when Oakland couldn't put it into the end zone. Boy, that's another great weapon to have with all the weapons that they do have with Derek Carr and what he has to do. So a nice win for them. That was another one of those games. A lot of people think Tennessee they could win the division. I picked them to win a division. They have a home game here. That was a nice Week 1 matchup and a good win for the Raiders.
Yeah. So all things considered, if you look at who had the biggest wins, and we have 2 games left tonight, remember the ESPN doubleheader, New Orleans at Minnesota, so that's the return of Adrian Peterson to Minnesota, followed by the Chargers at the Broncos, get used to saying it, the Los Angeles Chargers at the Denver Broncos, and my guy Trevor Siemian tonight. But if we look back on it, the 2 worst losses to this point, in my opinion, for sure, are Cincinnati and Houston. And the 2 best wins, I think, are Kansas City and Oakland. I think when you look at Kansas City going on the road and beating New England, it's going all the way back to Thursday, and then Oakland with a win at Tennessee against a team that we think is going to be a really good team. Those, to me, are the 2 best wins.
And with that Oakland, Marshawn Lynch carried the ball 18 times. You know, he's not going to be 25, 30 carries, but 18 times, 76 yards. And if you watch him on the one play, we know he's a strong runner. When he drops that shoulder, he flattens Jarrell Casey, who is a 300-pound nose tackle. He just absolutely dropped him. So it was good. Marshawn Lynch, the piece was back. Did you see he interrupted Jack Del Rio's presser as well? This guy knows exactly how to play the media, but out there having some fun and a good win for the Raiders.
Absolutely. So the Raiders now have won 7 straight games at 1 o'clock Eastern time. That's the longest in the last 25 years by any West Coast team. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. Jeff Saturday in our studio a little less than 15 minutes from now talking more about the NFL with you. Meanwhile, let's go back to Saturday, Golic, and some of the college action. I know you were at Notre Dame, Georgia. That was a disappointing loss for the Irish.
Sure was. Absolutely was. And kudos to the a lot of people tweeting saying, Golic, you embarrassed all the red that was in the stadium. No, I'm impressed, how Georgia travels. And I would hope Notre Dame would travel as well when they go down to Athens. I think it's not next year, but the year after. They all traveled well. I talked to a lot of the Georgia fans before the game. There were thousands that were up there that didn't even get into the game. There was some kind of ticket snafu and they didn't get in, but there were certainly a number of them that were in the stadium. And they had, listen, I think what really we saw there was against Notre Dame's offense, that Georgia defense showed a lot of speed. And on the offensive side, they ran the ball well. But one thing what I did have is, these new stadiums now have Wi-Fi, and I have that big iPad now, so I was watching this game. But I was also on the Wi-Fi. I was watching Oklahoma and Ohio State as well. So they were on it basically at the same time, but I was able to watch them both. So, yeah, tough loss for the Irish, no doubt about it. Kudos for Georgia to coming up to South Bend and getting the win there. Close game, 20-19. It was a good battle. Got really interesting going late in that game. But as I mentioned, Georgia ran the ball well, and that Georgia defense showed an awful lot of speed. And then Ohio State and Oklahoma. Talk about Oklahoma exacting revenge. So 2 years now, each team winning on the other team's field. Very, very impressive. And, I mean, beating them. Ohio State beat Oklahoma last year, and Oklahoma beat Ohio State this year.
Here was to me, if you watch that game, here was my takeaway. I was sure Ohio State was going to win in the second half because Oklahoma thoroughly dominated the first half of that game. And they did, not only did they not put it away, I thought they were in trouble. And I'm figuring, and I'm watching Booger and Mac Brown at halftime, and Mac Brown is stressing all the positives. Listen, we've got them on the run and all that. I thought, man, they let Ohio State hang around, and now Ohio State's going to do their thing in the second half. And it started that way. They get the touchdown to start the second half, and I'm thinking Ohio State is going to win this game big, and Oklahoma let it get away. And then Baker Mayfield happened. That kid was tremendous in this game.
He moves around incredibly well when he has to. Threw for 386, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. But he is just a spark plug for that offense. The way he moves, the way he throws the ball, and what a game that he had. And for Ohio State, listen, I know he's been great for the program, especially the year they had all the different quarterbacks that had to play. But J.T. Barrett just struggles throwing the ball. He just absolutely struggles throwing the football. We know he can run, we know he can move around, but throwing the ball, he is not an accurate quarterback. So in those close games when you need it, when you got Baker Mayfield, throwing dimes out there, Ohio State can't answer it. They can't answer it, with the quarterback play. They just couldn't. So a big win for Oklahoma in this one, which matched up what is considered the top offensive line. They had all 5 returning O-linemen up against the 2 deep for the defensive line for Ohio State, which had their entire 2 deep back this year after the drubbing Ohio State put on them last year. Boy, what great revenge for Oklahoma, and we'll see where it carries them on down the road. I picked Oklahoma State to come out of the Big 12. A lot of people picking Oklahoma, others, looking at TCU, but some great matchups in that Big 12, which now has a championship game. So we look forward to that. But just as the win helped Ohio State last year, we'll see what it does for Oklahoma down the road.
We'll have Oklahoma's coach, Lincoln Riley, about an hour from now, live here on Mike and Mike with his thoughts. And then a lot of attention after the game given to the fact that Baker Mayfield came running up with the Oklahoma flag and sort of planted it.
Didn't plant it.
Well, whatever. How would you describe what he did?
He tried to. Listen, for those that are getting all bent out of shape about that thing, what do you do that to Ohio? Listen, if you're an Ohio State player or I'm a player on that team, what am I doing? I just got my butt handed to me. I'm not worrying about a guy running around with a freaking flag on the field. And you want the player to do that. They went there and they won. Now, for Baker Mayfield, if he would have just waved it and that was it, at some point, you have to realize it's a turf field. And planting the flag you're not going to be able to plant the flag in a turf field. So he tried to plant it, and it fell flat on that. So he's catching a lot of grief for that. And also, do you plant a flag and another guy saying, that stuff doesn't bug me. The college players, a huge win for them, running around, enjoying the win. You know what? I know the old adage, Ohio State, you don't want to plant the flag, then stop them. Okay, understood. But if I'm an Ohio State player, I'm not losing my mind. I'm worried more about what the hell just happened on the field to me than a guy running around with a flag.
Absolutely. My goodness, people act as though this was a war. It was a football game.
Stop.
They didn't plant the flag of another nation at midfield. They planted their flag or tried to because they won a football game. Yeah. People acted as though some horrible act had just been taking place. Let's just keep this in perspective. A bunch of college kids were excited they won a football game against a team that embarrassed them in their building the year before. All good. No harm, no foul. Great win for Oklahoma.
All great.
The reaction to that was just completely overdone.
All great until you tried to plant the flag. And then you went, uh-oh.
The fail that was the planting of the flag is far worse than the act. People acted as though it was some sort of horrible act that they were doing. This, come on, please.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
All right, Mike and Jeff Saturday has made his way into our studio here as we go around the action from yesterday in the National Football League. And Jeff, one of the things that I think we've seen an increasing significance in recent years, and a few different people, I forget who exactly brought it up last week about the decrease in line play in general, but college guys aren't being trained the same way because of the difference in the system. So the teams that have really strong offensive lines now really stand out, and we've seen it with Dallas, and we've seen it with Oakland and a few others that have been really good in that area. And on the flip side, we have some pretty good football teams that got some terrible line play yesterday. Let's start with the Giants. Oof. Giants-Cowboys last night. Through your very experienced offensive line eyes, what did you see?
Front four from the Cowboys just flat out getting after them. And you know, if you're the Giants, you know going in that game, you have to protect Eli. OBJ's out. You know what the expectations are. I also don't really love the play calling. I mean, you're in the game. The defense is holding up the best they can. Yeah. They're on the field forever. But you're throwing the ball. And we talked about this when everybody talked about all the toys that Eli Manning has and all the receivers and all the weapons and how they're going to lead for the most pass attempts in the league and all those kinds of things. At some point, you have to control the line of scrimmage, and you have to give your defense a break. And so at some point they're going to wear down, but you're only calling 14 or 15 runs in the whole game, and you're throwing it 30, 40 times. And listen, I understand games get sideways, and there are some games that are dictated that you have to throw the ball because you're down early, but they were down 6 and still in this game, and they're still throwing it repeatedly. And you saw the Cowboys kind of made that error early when they get in the red zone and they throw it 3 times, and Elliott didn't get a chance to run it in. But that's not their mindset. To me, the Giants have to change their mindset if they want to be a capable football team, because you have got to establish the run. You cannot depend on a quarterback and receivers. If you are one-dimensional, you have no shot, especially with that offensive line.
12 rushes, 38 passes. Sometimes it's not about the yards you gain, but the attempts that you have as well. So from their line play, the other line is a Seattle offensive line. What people were tweeting, and what do they do now? What do you do? I mean, you got the 5 you have. I mean, you can tinker a little bit with it, but it's not like you magically can say, oh, this protection now is all of a sudden going to work. Right. If your guys are getting beat by 4 guys on the D-line, there's not a whole lot that you can do. You got to either max protect, change up the play call a little bit like you said, but as far as those 5 players, what more can be done?
Yeah, and you look at this one's probably the most disappointing to me. You know, with the Giants, you kind of understood what they were doing. They drafted Flowers. They're trying to develop this kid right at left tackle. So they're going to he's going to be what he is, and he's working and he's trying to get there. So, but with the Seahawks, they didn't address it. You know, Fent was going to be their guy. He goes down. I get that. But he wasn't the answer either. No. I mean, he's got to be trained and developed in these offensive line. But it's the mentality that you're going to go find guys at different positions. You're going to let really good ones go. The Ungers of the world are going to leave and go on to different places like the Saints. And you can just build and create. It doesn't work like that. And that you didn't address it in the offseason is frustrating. I'll tell you who's got to be most frustrating for is Russell Wilson, because you saw the third play of the game, Nick Perry basically runs through the left tackle. Right. Mike Daniels is in the backfield the entire day, and everybody knows who Mike Daniels is. If you play in the NFL, fans may not know. I'm telling you, everybody who's played against this kid.
Every O-lineman knows who Mike Daniels is.
He was a rookie my last year playing. I'm going to tell you, he's a tank. And he flat out got after these guys. And to your point, at some point, letting Lynch go. It's the mentality of what this football team is. I don't care how good Russell Wilson is. I don't care how good every other receiver, Baldwin, the whole thing, you're going to get Jimmy Graham. It was the mentality of the Seahawks football team offensively that coupled with that defense. And now you see the defense get exposed at the end of the game because they're exhausted. And Russell Wilson is running for his life, which, again, makes him look bad, right? The sack fumble on the 6-yard line that turns into points. All of those things stem from when every play you're feeling pressure as a quarterback, you begin to do things that aren't intelligent, not because you don't know how to play football, but because you're just going on instinct trying to survive.
So what do? Here we are. We're 1 week into the season. We know that teams are hitting less, practicing less, and doing less in the preseason, not to mention what comes before the preseason. So you're still kind of a work in progress, probably until somewhere like week 3, 4, 5. So how much better can the Giants offensive line get? How much better can the Seattle offensive line get? Because those are two teams that are thinking about making playoff runs this year.
Absolutely, and expected, right? In my opinion, techniques and fundamentals are what we miss. Everybody in the NFL is so scheme driven. We're gonna line up. We're gonna scheme them. We're gonna formation them, which means they're gonna put motion. They're gonna try to find, and they're always trying to affect the defensive backfield, as opposed to lining up and teaching techniques and fundamentals of offensive line play. Where your hat leverage is, where your body position. Are you leveraging the actual play? And you'll watch it, and it doesn't go together. You watch a zone play going to the right, and I see all the hats of the offensive lineman on the left side of the defense lineman. That doesn't work. That means he's staying in his gap, right? It doesn't make sense that's what you're asking guys to do. And you don't need to be in pads to learn that. I teach my kids in high school, this left ear hole has got to be across the bow of that man. That means it's a mentality of you go and do this and work on this every day. Like a cow seeking shade. I mean, that's what Howard Mudd used to say. This is what you're going to do every day, man. It's never going to change. But you watch it happen, and then you go turn on the Cowboys film, and you see how well they're coached. And it doesn't matter if the next guy comes in and has to play guard. The next guy, it's all a concert, right? You're watching, and I call them ballerinas. I mean, you look at this, and these are the biggest ballerinas in the world. But watch all their footwork, their hat placement, where they're leveraged, and how the back just waits patiently for it to enter. And I mean, it's a thing of beauty when you love the game of football to watch it. And when it's bad, it's really bad. And it really frustrates me to watch it on good football teams where you're wasting talent.
Yeah, I mean, good football. And we talk about the Cowboys. We talk about the Raiders. There's probably the two best lines and two good wins by them yesterday. As far as a good and bad, talk about the Rams. The Rams get a monster win. Goff looks pretty good out there. But your old team, man, the Colts, I mean, so pick whatever side you want first, the bad or the good, but they're the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I'm going to try to compliment Goff because I haven't done that very often. So he played as well as I've seen him play. And I know the Colts helped him in a great way. But he looked competent and he looked capable in the pocket. And he made the throws that you expect the QB in the NFL to make. So I was happy for him. That he has definitely progressed, and that relationship, new head coach, the whole deal. You saw him grow as a player. And I don't care who it is. Listen, it's hard in the NFL to put up that amount of points and to play that well. I know they got 2 pick sixes, but he played well. Gurley played well. You saw them get to what they want to get to. As far as you flip it over on the Colts, that's about as ugly as I've ever seen it. And I knew going in with Tolzien being the guy, this is not going to be pretty. I don't think they had any intention of Tolzien getting a snap under center in the regular season. And as luck and this whole thing has played out as weirdly as it possibly could, he's overmatched. And listen, yesterday is what he is. And that's not a great – and listen, that's without Aaron Donald. I mean, can you imagine if Aaron Donald was on the field? I mean, it would have been even uglier. And so – with Brissett trying to come in and play, who's been there for, however many days, 5 practices or whatever it is, it's unfair to ask him to come in and do something. He doesn't even know the playbook. It could get really ugly if they don't find a way defensively to stop somebody. And you can't put them on the defense, but you can't,
What do you do with Luck? I mean,
where is he?
Yeah.
Where are we with him right now?
Hasn't practiced. And this is the caution I will say to every Colt fan in the world. And this is when he comes back, he's not ready. So you and I both do, but everybody thinks, okay, this guy's going to come out and all of a sudden, I mean, think about Cam Newton yesterday, right? Cam Newton at least took some preseason reps. Luck hasn't done anything in an extended amount of time. You don't come back to the game and it all falls into place, especially with no run game and an average offensive line and an average defense. Why rush it? You know it's going to be ugly. He's not, the way that you looked yesterday, unless you see vast improvement, the risk of your franchise by putting Luck in there, to me, you hold off.
And at what point do you say, you know what, we're now holding off the season?
Yeah.
I mean, we know players, when you're healthy, you want to play. You want to get out, and normally a coach says, the doctor says he's healthy, put him out there to play. But with Luck, you wonder where the tipping point is of saying, just sit.
Yeah.
That's twofold. He has the entire season to get better, we're going to stink really bad and get a great draft pick, which we don't need a quarterback for, so that's going to be a king's ransom for us. So you wonder where management is in all of this.
I completely agree. And if you think about the division, you used to say it's going to be a cupcake division. You know, we could potentially win it even if he doesn't play the first 4 or 5 games. But now you saw the way Jacksonville played. Houston, has them, but teams are getting better. And Tennessee, that's a very good Tennessee football team who lost to the Raiders, another good team. But if you're sitting there in the wheelhouse like you're talking about, I may pump the brakes on getting my boy Luck back in, wait it out, and let's really see if we can help him if it gets ugly early.
And at that point, figure out who the coach is going to be, because there's no way in the world he makes it through that either. Jeff Saturday is here.
Dad, we talk a lot about sports.
Yes, we do.
Food.
Yep.
And sometimes even health.
That is true.
In a recent survey, the Cleveland Clinic found that today's fathers and sons are talking more about their health than previous generations, but there's still a conversation gap around below-the-belt issues.
Cleveland Clinic wants to remind all men to mention it to their doctor.
Doctors have heard it all before, especially Cleveland Clinic. They're ranked #1 in urology in the nation.
And they've got answers to 10 questions most men are afraid to ask at clevelandclinic.org/mention it.
Got a good one. The Browns lose another opener yesterday. They have now lost 13 consecutive season openers. That is the longest such streak in NFL history. For example, Joe Thomas, who, what did we say, is about to play 10,000 plays.
Joe Thomas is 4 plays away from playing 10,000. He's never been off the field. 10,000 consecutive plays. I mean, it blows my mind. I mean, a guy, Jeff, who's walking into the Hall of Fame in 5 years when he's done, but the durability of that on the offensive line where it's a car wreck every play, 10,000 consecutive plays.
But do you know what he's never been? He's never been 1-0.
Oh,
they
never.
Haven't won an opener in all the times he's been there. So let me ask you this. Who was the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns the last time they won a season-opening game? Give you a minute to think about it. We'll have the answer for you in just a few minutes here on Mike and Mike. Who was the starting quarterback for the Browns?
Pick like 1 in 29, can't you?
The last time they won a season-opening game. Before we get to that answer, let's do Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. If it's halftime of your opening game, Jeff, Saturday, and you have changed quarterbacks, as they did in Houston yesterday, what does that say?
Well, it says Savage wasn't getting rid of the ball on time, but their O-line was getting killed. You know, Jacksonville's D-line flat out got after him, and I think O'Brien, who we know has the quickest hook of any coach I've ever seen in my life, pulled Savage out probably just to try to give him a spark because the game wasn't completely out of hand. So I think he's trying to find a spark, and Watson would provide that. But in my opinion, once you go with Watson, why not keep riding him? You know, but then you go, hey, we got a short week. All those things come into play. I don't like the quick hook. I really don't. I think it's the old adage, you know, you got 2, you got none as when it goes to quarterbacks. And it's one of those thought processes for me is this wasn't all on Tom Savage. The offensive line was really struggling. Yeah. They had no run game. They were being exposed. You know, to pull one guy when you know Watson's going to struggle for success unless you just keep riding him and let him kind of develop. It's still early in my opinion. So I don't know if O'Brien goes back with Savage, but it's hard to do. It's hard to go back and forth, man. I don't love the play.
You have basically said I will pull the trigger quickly.
Exactly.
So I don't see why you would continue doing that. If I'm not Deshaun Watson, get where maybe even more important, or not more important than game reps, but taking all the snaps with the ones in practice.
Exactly.
You can talk to that from a quarterback standpoint. Now he gets the lion's share and not the backup share. That could really help in the development.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you think about the way defense has changed from preseason to regular season, all the different looks, the way they change coverages. They line up in one front and they shift the front to get into a blitz look. He's not seeing any of that. I mean, he's probably taken 3 of every 10 plays, if he's lucky, in practice, and you're leading up to expect him to throw him out in the middle of a half and go, hey, good luck.
Yeah.
There's no second stringers. All those guys on the Jags are staying in the game, and now you're asking him to do something. He hasn't even seen the look. Yeah, it's unfair. You got to make a decision if you're O'Brien. I said this before. I said this last year. You can't have 3 and 4 quarterbacks a year. Look at the Browns. It does not work. Find a guy and ride with it and stick with it, whatever it looks like. At some point, you got to develop that guy. That's what your job is supposed to be. Quarterback guru, whatever that means. Go find one and develop him and work with him until he can get you proficient on offense.
All right, so meanwhile, they play Thursday night at Cincinnati. Andy Dalton coming off an absolutely terrible game. Now, you're not going to go to the bullpen there that quickly, but they do have a backup that people like. Up against the Baltimore at home to get shut out. Now, the Ravens defense is good, but it doesn't have Ray Lewis and Ed Reed anymore. I mean, this isn't the 2000 Ravens. So,
all right, stop there. I'm going to tell you, I said this in preseason, this Ravens defense is flat out legit. I'm not going to put them there because that takes a lot of games. Yeah. They're going to win a lot of games because of this defense. This defense, Mosley, Suggs, the back end with Weddle and Jefferson now, what he did yesterday, don't just put it on Andy Dalton. I'm telling you, this Ravens defense could do the same as they did back in 2000 where they win a bunch of games with, 10, 14-type point games from their offense. Joe Flacco won't be asked to do a ton, run the ball efficiently, because they are getting after it at all three levels. I was very impressed in preseason. It did not diminish yesterday. Dalton didn't play well, but don't sleep on this Ravens defense. They're very good.
Ravens won a game yesterday. Joe Flacco completed nine passes. Straight Talk Wireless nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. All right, I gave everybody a minute to think about it. Cleveland Browns have not won an opener in a really long time. We mentioned Joe Thomas has never been 1-0. Anyone have a guess who the starting quarterback was the last time the Browns won their opening game?
It was in 1852, and it was Jeff Garcia.
The answer is not 1852, but it is Jeff Garcia. That is correct.
Well done.
They've lost 13. They sent him the stat. They've lost 13 consecutive season openers, the longest such streak in NFL history. The last time the Browns won their opener was 2004. Jeff Garcia made the start. Again, Joe Thomas, drafted in 2007, has never been 1-0. All the quarterbacks who have failed to win a season opener since: Charlie Fry, Brandon Weeden, Trent Dilfer, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn, Jake Delhomme, Colt McCoy, Brian Hoyer, Josh McCown, RG3, and now Deshaun Kaiser.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. But I want to give a second again to Joe Thomas.
You better.
4 plays. Gang, just understand that. 10,000 consecutive plays on the offensive line.
And you're always 0-1. Oh. God bless you, Joe Thomas. Oh,
how many times have they come back from 0-1 to have a winning record in that stretch? How many times have they been over 500 in his career? If it's happened at all, it's been very few.
Wow.
Jeff, you're the best. Thanks a million. Booger McFarland on the way. Lincoln Riley on the way. Stay there. Mike and Mike on a Monday.
First time skydiving?
Sure is.
Okay, you just open the door like this and you jump. Wait.
Should we be like in tandem?
Tandem? That's a great idea.
Are you a certified instructor?
No, but I love parachutes and I love people. Here we go.
You wouldn't take chances with an uncertified skydiving instructor. Don't do it with your finances. Find a certified financial planner professional today at letsmakeaplan.org. CFP. Work with the highest standard.